So, Martin, remember there was a rich man who went to Jesus and said, like, oh, how do I enter the kingdom of God? And, said, and then Jesus said, oh, you need to sell all your possessions. And he looked really, really upset, right? So that's really challenging. What does Jesus mean when he says, sell all your possessions?
Yeah. Does that mean you take your credit cards out your wallet, you go to anybody on the street and say, here, guys, off you go. Sell all your possessions. And that's true. And then, okay, there's a couple of things here which we do because people will maybe be aware of this. I mean, we are in one of the capitalist centers of the known universe where people value one another on the basis of their possessions. And you know, we're in a church which is based upon people's giving. Without their possessions, they can't give. So what's going on here? Jesus says elsewhere how hard it is for a rich man. When this guy goes away, this rich man, and he said, look, there's one thing you lack, go sell all your possessions and come follow me. You give them to the poor and come follow me. And then he turns to his disciples when this poor guy has left, and he says, how hard it is for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. And he said, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. You know, and the disciples are shocked. Now, okay, Jesus uses what was very characteristic of the time, which is what we call rhetorical hyperbole, which is a complicated way of saying you just use something that's completely extreme to make a point. Camels were the largest land animals. Eye of a needle was the smallest hole.
Okay.
So you're trying to get the biggest thing through the smallest hole. That's basically what it is. Put an elephant. Yeah, impossible is basically what he's saying. But then they ask, oh, is it impossible? And he said, no, it's possible for God. In other words, because God can change people's hearts. But what's the thing about money and wealth, and why does he say elsewhere, sell all your possessions? Is he demanding, and certainly that there's gone into the Christian faith, this emphasis on ascetic living or living simply and stuff like that, and some people did indeed give all their possessions, and indeed still do. Again, what Jesus is saying is one of the problems with wealth is it feeds into us, into the way we want control. Now, one of the issues of our separation from God, one of the examples of our rebellion against God, is that we don't want him to be God. We don't want God to be God. Why? I want to be God of my own. I want to be in control of my own self. That was the whole thing of the first man and first woman in the garden. They didn't want to listen to God. They wanted to do their own thing. I want to be like you. So, right. And that's the end of the story. Our rebellion is all about control. We want to be in control. We want to be in control of others. And wealth, increasing wealth, gives you increasing amount of power and control. It means you've got control over your life, you've got control over everything else. Now, of course, that means we want to amass the things that give us security and control. What Jesus is saying is, you don't need that. If you rely on your ability to control your life, and you're not going to need God. And it's the attraction of wealth, not because of just having money, but because of what money does.
Right.
It's not money in itself, it's not wealth in itself or ownership in itself. It's the fact that it feeds into us, and it also feeds into another thing that we really don't recognize very easily, which is greed and pride.
Yes.
And those two working together, just do it. I mean, nobody ever goes to a counselor and says, oh, please, can you please help me? I've got a real problem with greed. I don't think anybody has ever said that they've got a problem with greed. They just... You know, greed is something we do, and we talk about the greedy in the world, and Christians can be greedy too. So what Jesus is doing to this young man, he's saying, you need to basically get rid of your concern for your possessions. Now, if that means you sell them all, you get rid of them, then okay. But basically, he's saying your possessions cannot matter. Right. Now, it's in the same sort of vein as when we talked about, hating maybe mother and father. Right. It's the choice you have to make.
It's the condition of the heart.
It's a condition of the heart. Now, that doesn't mean to say people can't have wealth and be a Christian. That is clearly not true. But that is a very that's quite a difficult walk to walk, because you've got to be able to understand that God must always come first, and it's very difficult not to be money-minded, possession-minded. We know very well that the more we have, the more we care for what we've got. And when Jesus says how hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of heaven, it's you see, elsewhere he said, you know, if you want to enter the kingdom of God, and by the kingdom of God he means where God is, God's presence. He doesn't mean like the United Kingdom, a geographical place. He simply means the presence of God. And if we want to do that, we've got to become like a child. Now, a child is not overwhelmed with their possessions. So we've got to be childlike. We've got to be light-handed.
Right.
In my own life, I know when I've owned something and I've got and that includes job or even ministry, and God has got hold of my hands and just shaken them and said, actually, you don't own it, I do.
Right. In some sense, those things consume you, right? It becomes your idol. Yeah,
it does. Very quickly, it can become our idol, and as soon as we do that, we reject God. Making an idol is to put something in the place of God, and that's what Jesus is trying to avoid. And that's what this teaching is about. People can take it literally if they wish, but people have also simply got to understand that in putting Jesus first, everything else has got to come second. And that is going to need a day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour focus.
Yeah, wow. That's a great teaching on surrendering and submitting to Jesus.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks,
okay.